You know, in my world, and over the last 40 years, you stop and you think back at all the different situations that you've encountered and this and that. And sometimes you just got to think a little bit outside the box. I recall going back, I had two great big gorgeous pieces of walnut. And I'm talking these things are like 18, 20 inches wide, and we want to book match them and make a table. Well, we had a problem. I mean, these things had a crotch in them and just gorgeous. In the top, we had, again, book matched, so we had 4 knot holes. Not bad knots, holes, not gone. Well, this thing was just too pretty to say. I mean, you couldn't fill it. You know, there was just, what do you do here? What it needed was a knot put back, a nice, pretty knot, because it had all those little swirls and curls around it. So I got this bright idea. So I found a piece of walnut that was relatively thick, and I decided that I was going to inlay a knot. Now I'm going to show you what I did. This is the same piece of maple we had that we were showing you used the Bondo on, and that we did the, that we showed you the filler, using the regular filler on. I don't think I did is cleaned it off. So I've got this knot that was a big old open hole that's now been filled with body filler. It's hard as a rock. We're sound and solid. But in the case of this tiger maple, you know, if I just put a regular filler in there, I got a big old, you know, even if no matter what I do, I've got figure all around it. I've got this white or glob, not gonna match. So here's what I'm gonna do. My first thing I do is I take a wide piece of packaging tape and I'm gonna lay over it. Then I simply took a magic marker and just kind of drew what I want for an inlay. Now I want to emphasize something to you. You don't want to do a square. You don't want to do a rectangle. You want to do something freeform. The more freeform it is, the more believable it will be. Then I take it, put it over on a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, and scroll saw works best. I use the jigsaw real quick, jigsaw it out. Now you want to smooth up your edges a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some double-faced tape. Now you guys who watch the Mastering Woodworking show, you know about this. There's a lot of guys watching the finishing show or class or whatever it is. Don't. This is double-faced duct tape. Works really good. Now again, I'm going to emphasize this is something that, well, I hope you never have to use it, but if you do, it's nice to know that you got a way of getting out of trouble. Actually, in the case of that walnut top, it didn't get me out of trouble. It made me some pretty good money. I sold that table for a fair chunk of change. And those knots, you could not tell it. Now this tiger maple's harder, I'll grant you. Then I simply lay it over, secure it down, and here we are. Now what we're going to do, we're going to use one of the Inlay Kits with the router, and use an 1/8 inch bit. So you want to make sure you're at least 1/8 of an inch away from your defect. You want to be a little larger. Now here's the Inlay Kit. What you've got a router guide, and then you got a bushing goes on it. 1/8 inch bushing. And you want an 1/8 inch bit. And make sure you're centered. Now here's a tip. I realize this ain't got anything to do with finishing, but what you want to do, now I'm only going to go in about 1/8 of an inch here, is whatever side, and just in case your router isn't centered, if you kind of make this little mark on your router, and you always cut at the same point going around, it's not going to matter if it's centered. Kind of self-centering, if you will. Then we route this out. Now what I'm going to do, you can see right here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in here and keep till I get it cleaned out. That's simple. I'm just going to clean that void out. So I'm not going to leave this camera run. You just sit here and watch me keep going in a circle. So we'll be right back. All right, let's see what I got. Just hollow it out. Cut the recess. Now I'm going to take the same pattern. This time I'm going to remove the bushing, and that allows it to go in, and that's what cut our mate. Now one of the things, if you look at this, what we would have had here would have been a big swirly knot. Now what I've got here that I'm going to demo this with is just a piece of curly maple. Probably not the best choice. But I really don't want to cut this board up just to demo it. But if you look at this piece of wood right here, where it's got this knot, you see the curl up in here? To come in and get my inlay piece out of that is going to closer match this because I've got the swirls in it. So now that said, understanding this, the next time you're building something and you cut that out, you might want to get a little box and go on the side. You never know. All right, now I'm going to take my, and I'm going to do the exact same thing, except the only thing I'm going to do is go around the perimeter of this. I'll get this set up and we'll be right back because I'm going to have to clamp this down. All right, now what I'm going to have to do with this is I'm going to have to resaw it off, the piece. So what I want to do is I want to make the cut deeper than what I hollowed it out. About a 1/16 or so. The other thing I want to be very careful of is that I keep the guide tight to the outside as I cut it. I'll give you another little word of advice. Make sure you got a sharp bit. This one isn't. All right, now just so you know, the way I clamped that down was I actually took a piece of double face tape and just taped it to this plank just to keep it from moving. Now, what I got to do is I got to cut this out and then resaw it to get my filler in. So we'll be right back. All right, so I bandsawed it, put it across a little belt sander and flat level the bottom up. Now obviously I made mention of the dull bit, it is, but the other thing I should have done was made several different passes. But I would put some glue in it. Again, my preference on this would be white glue or some Tite Bond 3, but I like the white because it's going to give me, it's going to dry clear. Down pretty good. We sand it off. I think for a pretty neat repair. Again, tiger maple would be, would be a real tough one. Works. All right. Number one, went back and we just ran this through the planer real quick. Kind of give you an idea of a finished product. So we're not planer. We've got a little bit of rough area in here, just real quick. But as you can see, you have a, it isn't perfect, but it sure beats, just a big old filled glob. Works for me. Like I said, I hope you don't have to use something like that, but again, knowing how, save you a whole lot of aggravation. Now, I'm just looking at this thinking, depending upon what you got, you could actually take an adverse wood and make you a nice little design or whatever the case and inlay it in there, make it a decorative element. It's easy enough to do. So, that's all there is to it.